Good, af- good afternoon, all. This is Sharmila Jois Vellal here. I'm a special educator. I have done my master's in child psychology as well as inclusive education and a diploma in special education as well. So I have worked in the field of both mainstream schools, special schools, and now I run my own school called special school called Ananta Academy for Special Education. So today's topic, as ma'am mentioned, is about why is the requirement for education for children with special needs. So let me share the PPT with you all. Just a second. So when it comes to education for children with special needs, there's a lot of debate that goes on. There's a lot of what do you call preferences because to what extent should changes be made for curriculum, or to what extent are the children allowed to perform in the same space as the neurotypicals. That is the question that comes across, as well as what is the true education for children with special needs. That's something that we all need to address, especially the one who are in mainstream education, especially the teachers. When you're dealing with 30 odd children, to have children with special needs, how do you then balance the class, and how do you then manage behavioral concern that comes up in the classroom? That's something that is crucial. So therefore, keeping everyone's what you call perspective in mind, keeping everyone's problems that comes across, the parent of a child with special needs, the teachers who work with the child with special needs, the management of the school who works with child with special needs, as well as the child himself. When you look at all these perspectives, we need to look at why should we look at education for them, and what should the education be? These are the questions I tried to answer in today's session. So before we get into anything, let's try and understand what is special educational needs, right? So I have the definition given by Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan as well as UNESCO here. Programs for meeting the learning needs of students who are socially disadvantaged, disabled, and marginalized. So when they talk about special educational needs, the SSA clearly mentions that it's not just disabled, but the disadvantaged as well, and the marginalized as well. So keeping in mind, it includes children who are also in the from the rural area, who are from tribal community, who are from migrant population as well. So when you're looking at education as something that caters to diverse needs of the children, then why not include the disabled as well, right? So that's something we need to think about. Why is it education uh, uh, why should there be a new terminology called inclusive education when we include a child with special education? That's the question that we also have to think about. UNESCO, however, also mentions that educational intervention planned and designed to support special educational needs, because they realized that having the same program as that of the neurotypicals doesn't really encompass education for children with special needs. So they say planning and designing a separate curriculum for them is what is special educational needs, right? So uh, now, when we talk about special education needs, it doesn't come as simple as just planning and designing something separately for them. Because unlike the mainstream education, or designing a curriculum for a neurotypical student, among the special educational needs, what happens is that each child's requirement varies. Each child's disability varies. Just in the autism spectrum disorder, the spectrum is so huge that keeping children with ASD, that is autism spectrum disorder, we cannot just plan one curriculum. It becomes very difficult, right? So, and to make the matters even more difficult, we have RTE, Right to Education, which identifies 21 category of disability, right? So if I were to throw out that question to general public of how many disability do you know, you might be able to probably come up with 10, maximum 15 disability. What about the rest? Are we even aware of these disabilities? The next question. Have we even seen these individuals with different 21 different sorts of disability in the general population? So let's see what are these disability that the RTE mentions, right? These are basically the reason why the government came up with 21 disabilities, which is recognized by the government, is because uh, if you were to spend time with children with special needs or people, individuals with disability, you will know that categorizing a particular person with a disability into one box is very difficult, right? You have autism, you have Asperger's, you have ADHD, learning disability, and all of these, not only do they exist by themselves, but they also are comorbid with one another. So when it becomes about working with children who have comorbid disability, then boxing them into one category becomes very difficult. To avoid such confusions, the government has come up with 21 of these disability. So people who have any of one of these forms is basically receives or is able to apply for what we call as UDID, which is unique identification for ID for people with disability, so that they can avail certain concessions from the government, right? So if you look at it, we have things that we wouldn't even have thought of, such as thalassemia and dwarfism. It also has people with muscular dystrophy, right? So if you acid attack victims as well come under this. If you see each one of these disability, the requirement is so huge. The spread of the intelligence is so vast. So, how many of these disabilities do we actually see in the mainstream school? And how many have we been able to accept in the mainstream school while providing them a designed and curated curriculum for children with disability, right? Uh, Now, if you look at the requirement for the government's NEP or RTE, which says right to education should be provided by all, if you look at the UN SDG, that is, UN has come up with their own sustainable goals. And one of the goals, 17 of those goals, in which one of them, that is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth goal is quality of education. Equal quality of educations for all is what they say. So if you look at those, then how do we provide equal opportunity for education when there are so many spectrums of disorder? And how do we come up with a unique or a curriculum that is encompasses everyone? That is the probable main reason why our mainstream schools as well as education has taken a step back in terms of accepting children with disability. So, to understand better why everybody struggles in terms of accepting children with disability into their population, these are the different perspectives of view uh, in which people see a person with disability. One is the very famous charitable view, where the Ayo Papa feel that we have for our children, and the empathy, the so-called empathy that we have for them basically drives us to accommodate. So when there is a charitable reason to it, there's only so much you will go. There's only so much you will have expectations. The setting goals or target is in terms of like, just making the life comfortable, right? If you have the reasoning of supporting a child with disability as charity, then it doesn't really have a long sustaining reason as such. There are also biocentric view. When I say biocentric view, it basically includes the medical aspect of the disability, in terms of understanding the genetic, in terms of understanding the impact of our neurological development and things like that. So you want to rectify so that it doesn't occur ahead, or it doesn't move ahead. So that's one of the reasons people are also trying to, uh, when we take the case history of the child, for example, we usually tend to ask numerous questions and see what is the probability, based on the information given to us, that has led to the disability of the person. So this is another view in which the curiosity or the intention of interest towards disability exists. The other one being the functional view, which unfortunately holds true for our society. We basically are at the thing where we feel that everybody is entitled for rights, but if that person is not striving hard enough, and then if the person is not in the same capacity as them, why should they be entitled to it? So that is the major question that parents from mainstream education throw at us, right? If that child is not able to perform in the same level as my child, why are they in the same school? So it's not about performance, right? It's all about how you want to surround your own child with. Do you want to surround your child with competitions? Do you want to surround your child with um, belief that everything is amazing and everybody has the same capacity? Or do you want your child to build in some form of empathy, knowing that there are different category of people with different requirement and different sort of support given to them? And how do you support those children? Is it forceful support you give, or is it something that you understand and thereby you give support? So that happens only when our children are surrounded with all forms of children, not just, maybe underprivileged or tribal caste, or, even the moving population of migrants, right? So the functional view is what we need to work upon, and not think that everybody is entitled for their rights. What we want at the moment and what has begun at the moment is the human rights view, where we all talk, like if you go to MNCs, you have a separate section called inclusion and diversity, where people want to talk about supporting diverse population, where acceptance has become more of a norm rather than something that we're doing for your baba reason, or for showing that I'm interested to know what led to this, right? So we are at an age where even the young generation wants to make the world a better place by providing accessible footpath, probably by providing accessible apps, modern technology for everyone, not just for the privileged lot, but for everyone, right? So that's something that we need to keep in mind. If at all I am going to have a child with disability enter into education system, then how am I going to create the environment of inclusion, celebrating the diversity by providing the required accommodations? Not necessary just because I have this child they have to use the accommodation. Not necessary. Some of the children find it too um, what do you call, hurtful to be using any kind of accommodation, in spite of their inability to walk by themselves. They still would choose to climb the stairs with their friends, right? That's the kind of children we have in the world of disability. So uh, but what we want to inculcate in the society is the knowledge of getting to know an individual. That's about it. It shouldn't be about disability. It shouldn't be about what is your capacity versus my capacity. It should be about, I want to get to know you. It doesn't matter whether the child speaks in the language that you speak. It doesn't matter whether the child exhibits the intelligence that you hold as well. What matters is that seeing them for and respecting them and giving them the dignity for who they are. And when one's view turns into that, we will realize that education is actually a least of our, it's most easiest to provide for these children, right? So from being the charitable view to humanistic view is what we are hoping the society to change to, where they see everyone for them being themselves and not a person with ability or disability, right? So this is the progression that we have seen. So when I started 20 years back, my journey as a special educator, I was a sole uh, being there who was in her early 20s. Rest of the special educator there for training were all ladies who were done sending off their children to higher education or getting them married, so they have time, they don't know what to do. Therefore, they would come there to support the children with disability. That's how the perception was, or people were interested in special education during 20 years back. And now you have the generation, like when I go to give lectures in the colleges, I can see that the current generation wants to do something about this. They want to bring in that change, impact the life of people in small ways, but create that impact in such a way that it helps not only themselves but the one that they are helping out as well. So it used to be, this is the progression that we have seen in the society about where the children used to be with disability. It definitely started with exclusion, where we remember having centers and everything. Like my own center, for that matter, Ananta Academy, is an exclusive center. It's not an inclusive setup as such, but the purpose of the inclusive setup, sorry, the exclusive setup has changed recently. So from the uh, denying children with disability to be part of the society, we've moved to slowly about 20 years back into integration. So you would see a lot of school popped up which had their own special school unit, or which had vocational unit within them. I remember being very stunned and happy about the fact that a lot of schools, mainstream schools, when I was doing the diploma, had just begun their special school setup. So this way, at least the child, though or not in the same curriculum as the other children, would definitely use the same facility as the other children, right? So that was somehow much better than at least not excluding them. But now we are in the phase of education for all, because the NEP believes, so does the UNSDG, and so does multiple people. The corporates are also getting into this. You have the small scale entrepreneurs also wanting to develop some apps for these children, because everybody believes in education for all, right? We want to create a difference, not only in creating different curriculum as such, but in the way they express those curriculum or those knowledge as well. So after about almost about 5 to 7 years, people have been talking about inclusion now, but very little development or growth has happened. Now, as special educator, I think I can say very confidently, based on how it has been over the years, that people have come to the point of saying, even if at all a child were to put into the mainstream neurotypical school as such, uh, the one with a disability is still lagging behind. And it's not because uh, just about the ability, but the curriculum as such needs some planning, needs some tweaking. But it shouldn't be so humongous that the mainstream child can't do it. That's when the NEP's beautiful plan of having vocational subjects came into play. And if at all I mean, I'm really happy that the thought of including vocational subject at school level has been accepted by the government. So this helps a lot in terms of our children getting into mainstream school, and not only getting in, but also in completion of their course as well. So the challenges, however, the reason many schools don't get into the inclusive education, even for this date, is because of these factors. It could be the awareness and attitude, which is basically what I told earlier about everyone considering as only a privileged lot or a person with ability should get the opportunity to avail education, and a person without or have who have lesser ability than them should think otherwise or go for alternative schoolings, right? So that attitude needs to change. The direction has changed in terms of thought. The policies are coming in favor of the inclusion, but it doesn't take just the government or it doesn't take just the school management in bringing about these changes. What needs is a society to start thinking like that as well. So, as responsible citizens of the society, we need to start having an open mind about uh, having an inclusive setup. Like there are so many parents who are fearful, or they themselves are like, "Us bache se dur rahe," or don't interact with him, otherwise you will start talking like him. Those are the kind of insensitive talk that we get to hear as a special educator. So it's time that we kind of start teaching our children a little bit of empathy, because later on we want them to be a responsible citizen, not only for their house but for the country as well. And learning to respect and learning to accept people for who they are is the first step towards it, is what I believe. So the resources are being inadequate as well. So the government again has done a lot of work in terms of ensuring inclusion happens, in terms of supporting training happens, workshops are conducted for teachers, all that. But then what is missing is that the sustenance of those training and workshop or place generalizing those learning into the classroom, that is becoming a bit difficult. So the teachers who get trained, who does put in a lot of effort in terms of understanding the disability and all, end up changing, thereby causing this kind of discontinuity within the system. So these are the usual problem that happens even in the school, even in my centers too. But then it's very important that we have a backup of this, right? So the trained teacher who later goes and supports the school in terms of managing children with disability needs to have the process set in so that everything is not dependent on the teacher as such. So I think where we lag behind is establishing the process rather than the steps to it as such. I think in terms of infrastructure, India is as a country which has progressed to the level of being the fourth powerful country in the world. It's shameful that we don't have a society or a community where every public spaces is accessible by children or individuals with disability. Let's find one road which has good footpath where a person who's visually impaired or is using wheelchair is able to access thoroughly. That's an impossibility here, isn't it? So that's what we feel like. The mantras have been repeated again and again, and it's the whole community as such that needs to come together, more than just blaming it on the government as such. uh, Creating an inclusive environment where we just think about how do people who are aged as well, not necessarily a person who uses wheelchair, but for people who are aged, for them to access the roads or the public spaces. How inclusive are we? We don't take um, aged people outside because they might fall down anytime, especially when it rains, the roads get really bad. Our commune system is not so perfect that what if they get lost because the names are written in local language, so they don't know how to travel about. So there are all these uh, bigger issues that also needs to be dealt with, not just the education. So in terms of education, how many of our textbooks are in braille, for a person, for a child with low vision to access it? And how many, like, one of the best thing that the government has done is that we have a board called as NIOS, National Institute of Open School. And it's basically more than the braille as such. What they have done is every textbook of theirs are in audio version as well. So at least they had the thought of creating audio version. So what about the other boards then? Why are they not converting their materials into audio recordings, right? So simple stuff like these, which is very easy to do. We have so many companies now, corporates, software startups, who are into education. So I think it's time to start thinking bigger, because our population is also like, for a person. I mean, the population of the children with disability. They say that I'm not sure about the current census, but the old census said for every 10 students in a classroom, there is at least three of them that is disabled. This was 2011. So the new census, I'm sure, will say for every 10 students in a classroom, there is, I'm sure, six at least with disability. That's how much the disability has spread across. And we need to ensure that they have accessible materials for their education to get completed, right? And the curriculum also, I'm just waiting for the NEP to get, do their fine tuning and everything, because having theater as your subject, having yoga as your subject, painting, art, these are the subjects that's been offered as an alternative subject. So what better than, so when a program is initiated, as the proprietor of this or as participant in that field, we need to ensure that it gets completed as well. So instead of again looking for the government to do the work required, as educators, I think we need to start participating in it and be active contributors in it as well. So those are the uh, problems that we still see in terms of inclusive education to happen. So because of that, what is the thing that is happening is that um, I mean, like the main question we need to see is that a child with disability, are they it's not just the curriculum, it's not just the fact that they are coming to a school and going. It's about other aspect, like one of the schools that I worked in, the children with disability were in the classroom, of course, with a shadow teacher, but they were never involved in any kind of extracurricular activities. So why is that happening? So if at all it is got, we're talking about inclusion, then you have to ensure the child participates in everything that a neurotypical child participates in as well, right? So it's about making use of, and a child with disabilities able to access every kind of furniture or I remember one of my student having difficulty holding the spoon, and he couldn't eat food in front of his friends, and he would spill food on himself, and his friends would mock him for it, right? So that like he would always isolate himself and either eat the lunch before everyone or eat lunch after everyone, right? So things like that, we need to have, not only think about curriculum as an education, but create an environment that these children are able to sustain as well. So remember, when a child comes to a school, it's not for the sake of education, but it's for the sake of holistic development, which happens through physical activity, which happens through socializing with their friends, which happens through emotionally growing by observing others and by understanding the critically analyzing the situation. We need that for our children with special needs as well, not just the curriculum adaptation, right? So because of the opportunities that is lost, that is not being provided for the children with special needs, what are the other things that they'll end up doing? So of course, special schools such as Ananta Academy is what they go to. And our strive or our work has always been towards trying to provide as much opportunity and experience as a neurotypical child gets in the classroom, right? So um, earlier, the special schools would be more into just vocation, just functionally ensuring that the child has learned life skill management, is aware of their hygiene and safety and things like that. But nowadays the schools that is coming up, special schools, are with the avid goal or rigorous goal of actually getting our children to complete their 10th and 12th using the NIOS or using an IG supporting children with disability to complete their 10th and 12th. So the special schools that are coming up now are more focused on to not only the life skill management and hygiene and safety, but they are also into ensuring that the children are educated as well. So the skill-based learning, which happens now because of the NEP in mainstream school, are something that has been adopted by the special schools way early on as well. So we get into every subject that is taught is more to do with skill learning rather than just theory being learned as such. Vocational training, of course, is another thing that I wish that we have more of these as options because at the moment the vocational training that we see around is in terms of baking, computer programs, and gardening and things like that. But there are few, however, NGOs that is coming up with very unique ideas of getting training our children in area of either making electric circuit boards or app development or website planning and graphic designing and things like that. So why limit the children with disabilities future to just doing mundane work when they can be creative too if provided opportunity? So vocational training, I feel, though exist in plenty in Bangalore in comparison to the other metropolitan cities, but needs to have more varieties, what I feel. And alternative education or open schooling, that's what we do at America, where we're trying to not only get into just the completion of 10th and 12th, but we also get into holistic development of ensuring that the child has um, exposure in terms of physically being active and socially being involved, as well as emotionally and cognitively being in par with the peers in terms of problem solving and decision making and things like that. And it doesn't in terms of working with special needs children. Trust me, like a lot of people come and ask me, you must have a lot of patience to work with them. It's the other way around, actually. When you start working with a child with special needs, you realize that you reach this place of calmness because they're so absolutely giving, and not trying to be emotional or not trying to be illogical about it or anything, but the children with disability tend to be extremely innocent and tend to be extremely passionate about um, people around them. So when you work with them and when you have them around, what comes very effortlessly from them is the empathy because they understand what problems are. They understand what inability to express themselves is. So when they find people, they start with giving hugs, giving smile that warms your heart. So I definitely urge people in the education community to try and observe the children in different environment to see their capacity, the true capacity, and to understand their strength for what they are, and to also not see them for their disability, but their abilities as well. So, with this, I end my PPT. And thank you all for listening patiently. And if there's any question, and if you are not on board at the moment, you can email me or visit our website as well, which will have my email ID in it. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. I hope the audience have noted down your website address and email. If they have any questions, they will definitely reach out to you since we have kind of exceeded the talk time.
Sorry.
No, no issues. Ms. Sharmila, I'll just ask you only a couple of questions. Uh, so we have discussed about the challenges of the special needs children, and like, can you elaborate more on some of the common challenges that educators face when teaching children with special needs?
One most commonly observed difficulty that I have seen is the inability to sustain their attention in the classroom. Most of the children with disability tend to have low attention span and tend to want to, and they are not really, they have a particular style of learning, right? So it's either they are visual learners or auditory learners. So in classroom situation, what happens is that the teachers will end up either only showing the notes or doing the PPT. And while they are talking, they show something, two different teaching style, the children won't be able to follow through. So therefore, once they are not able to take in too many of the information being given, they start showing behavioral concerns. So I feel as educators, it's very important that we understand that if a child is unable to sit for more than 10 minutes, we can give them, go walk and come back, because they find a lot of information being given at the same time. So when I say information, it is not just teacher teaching them, but you also take in information from your surroundings, right? People sitting in front of you, there's somebody walking by, or there is a bell that is ringing next door, or some people are going to clattering into the field. So there are all these are distractions for the child. A person like you and me will be able to manage all these happening around us, yet focus on a task. But for a child with disability, all these are important too. They don't know what is important enough that they have to focus only on that, right? So when that is called a sensory overload for these children, and that's why they show the behavioral tantrums or not able to sit in the class. So when we don't understand, what we can least we can do is that tell the children go for a walk and come back. Why don't you sit quietly for some time, listen to some music, and come back to the class? You can give these kind of options for them as
So, we have discussed about children and adults too. Like it's not only about education. You were, concerned about the society, helping out the old people or anything like that. In your view, what should the government come up with, like to ease out this situation, ma'am?
So the government, the thing is that implementation is where the problem is. They have come up with fantastic policies, the support that they are providing the schools as well as parents are. It's very good. I mean, they have at least started the steps, and they have at least like when NEP came up in 2020, right? And the steps have not been completely taken by few of the schools, and the acceptance of those policy change has not happened in few of the schools. So implementation is where we are lacking. So probably when the government comes up with more incentives for the school management to accept these policy change, it might help them out as well. But I think as I'm proud Indian, I feel the government is taking steps in the right direction. It just needs a lot of support from the school administration as well as educators to implement those. I mean, if you want to reach the sky, you can't just fly high, right? That's something as Indians is very difficult for us to do. At least
Right.
let's start taking one step at a time.
Yes. So, can you discuss about the importance of individualized education plans?
Yeah. So, as I told you, there are 21 disabilities, right? 21 forms of disability. Under each 21 form, there are more disability that comes under, right? So, it becomes very difficult thereby to say all children who are 6 years old will write 10 sentences, right? That's very difficult, especially when it comes to children with disabilities. So, uh, we basically, as a special educators, what we do is we look at the capacity of the child and we kind of draw out, okay, so if at all he's not able to sit for 10 minutes, let's start with 5 minutes, give him the reward required, and then keep moving and reach the level that is expected out of the school, right? So it's not about the individual education plans, thereby help us plan things as per the requirement of that specific child. And you can't use the same plan for the another child, because other child's strength might be reading or spelling, while this child's strength is mathematics, right? So we are planning, however, though we plan each child's curriculum, I'm sorry, the program in different ways, the
Mhm.
content that we use might be same. The curriculum can be the same, but we decide that if I'm going to give the entire class 10 worksheets to do on mathematic concept of ratio or fractions, then I'm going to give only two worksheets for a child with disability. That is the individualized education plan. It's not some rocket science that you will need some lawyer to help you out with, right? So you decide that there's only two worksheets. One worksheet will have a lot of visual cues, and the other worksheet will be just about all the concepts put into one sheet only, right? So that is the individualized education plan that people can implement in the classroom, where you understand what that particular child's strength or achievement capacity is, and you plan according to.
Right. Small changes with the
Yeah.
according to the needs.
Yes.
So, ma'am, people ask you, as you mentioned, that people ask you, you must be having so much of patience to educate these children with special needs. So, what are some myths, common myths or misconceptions about educating children with special needs?
Oh, there's a lot actually. um, the belief that we will be miraculously able to heal the child and the child will feel better, all better in about a year is the most common one. So when a parent comes to us, they are with all hopes and they say, "When do you think he'll be better?" And we are like, "I'm sorry, we're not into medical sciences and we can't give a pill and say he'll be fine in this is a slow growth. We are talking about going one step at a time. So if that is one very big assumption by the parents that once the child comes to a special educator, he'll be all better. The other one is from the school management where they think that all their problems will be managed by special educator regarding the child and they want no involvement about the child as such, so the child is just dumped onto you. That's the literal word I'm using because they forget the existence of the child in the school after that. And the biggest the most common misconception is that which I feel I hurt as a special educator is regarding the uh, reinforcement given to the special educators.
Mhm.
Because it's been considered as a charitable cause, right? And the special educators are expected not to expect salary or hike in it or having financial independence.
Mhm.
If primary teachers and nursery teachers are considered the least paid, imagine special educators are even lesser paid than them, with constant renewal of their skills, with constant, want to grow their own skills as a special educator, and having master's degree in psychology, having diploma in special education, they are still paid lesser than a regular teacher, which I think it's high time that we change this and give the due respect for the special educators as well.
I agree, ma'am. So that's all from my end, Ms. Sharmila. Thanks for asking, thanks for answering all the questions patiently. You have, I have prepared so many questions, but you have covered everything. So I couldn't ask you
Thank you.
more. So that's all for the day today. And anything you want else you want to mention?
No, I think I've covered up on the points. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure. And yeah, it'll be great that there's more work done in towards the inclusive education from this henceforth. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.